Bega Mashik and Dijanikas. Maingan Nindudayan. Gawababi Ganika Nuindibayan. I said my spirit name is, I don't know how to interpret it. It's like the little tornadoes that you see, you know, like the snow and the leaves and the sand. My clan is the wolf. It's kind of like my passageway to the Creator is the wolf will help me. I come from White Earth, the land of white clay. Mary Favorite is my English name. I grew up in Pine Point, Minnesota. Well, I moved there when I was about 13, I think. When I was I was born in White Earth here at the hospital, and when I was a baby, my mom didn't take me home right away because I don't know, that I was sick or something. My dad inherited my grandmother's farm, and so he was raising animals and stuff like that, and he had a big wheat field or whatever, corn. And when I was about 2, you know, his siblings, they all stepped forward and they said, you know, we want you to sell it now because we want our share. And so they kept on my dad, and my dad finally just said, you know, take it, and left. And moved the family, and we moved to my mother's family in Cass Lake, and I was just learning how to talk when we got there, and so the Ojibwe language is my first language, and I didn't know how to talk English until I went to school, and I went to a little school. It was a one-room schoolhouse called Man School, and the first day that I went, you know, we had never, well, I never saw a person, a non-native person. So it was kind of a shock to me, you know. Anyway, my teacher was non-native, and we walked into the school, and she was standing up against the blackboard, you know, with her arms crossed like this here. And I remember walking in, looking at her, and my mouth just dropped. And I kept staring at her like, what's wrong with her, you know? I went home, and I told my mother I wasn't going back to school. And she said, oh, you have to. And she said, well, why don't you want to go to school? And I said, there's this woman there. I said, she's sick. She had no color. I said, even her hair is yellow. But that was my first experience, you know, with the non-native. And the school I went to was kind of like a boarding school type of thing, you know. She was very abusive to us. We always got spankings. We'd get our hands beat up with rulers. And every year, I think I went to school there 4 years. Every year that we went, they would take us to get our eyes examined, to get our teeth checked, to go for a physical, and all that. And we go to the hospital. And each trip was separate because, there was like 30 of us in this school. And so anyway, I remember one time going there and I think it was we were all going to the dentist. And I could hear them kids screaming and crying. They were getting their teeth drilled and stuff like that, with no Novocaine, nothing. And so I was scared. And so by the time they came to get me, I was already afraid, and I started to cry right away. So they took me in and made me open my mouth, and I think I bit him. And he said I had some cavities. I had, I think, about 3 or 4 cavities, and he was going to drill them out. So he started to drill, and one of my teeth, he hit the nerve, and I just, went through the ceiling. And I started crying. And fighting, and anyway, he slapped me. And, so that's the kind of abuse that we had, and, but, I continued to go to school there until I was 4, or in 4th grade. Then we moved back to White Earth again, my dad's village. And I went to school in Pine Point. I remember first coming into Pine Point, it was kind of like a cultural shock to me, because where we lived, I mean, there was just our house, nobody else around, and anyway, when we moved to Pine Point, I remember looking and seeing all these different little shacks, and I was thinking, wow, it's a big city. And but anyway, I went to school there, and some of my relatives, they used to poke fun at us because we came from the woods. That's what they called us. Go back to the woods. And I went to Park Roberts High School. When I was going to school there, we suffered abuse again. I always said Little Rock had nothing over on the kids in Pine Point, or kids in Park Rapids. Our bus would pull in, and they would all stand in line, and they would, give the war whoop and dance and, stuff like that. And some of us got punched, some of us got pushed. Very abusive to us. And, it turns out, when I became 16, I thought, I ain't taking this abuse, I'm done. So I quit school. I went back to school when I was living in St. Paul. I went back to high school, and I met this guy, and I ended up with him, and we got an apartment together. I think I was about 2 months pregnant, and he left, up and left me, So I came home, stayed with my mom and dad, and fought to get back into high school. And I got back into high school. I I had to take. I think I quit school when I was in 10th grade, and so I had to take my 10th, 11th, and 12th grade in 1 year. And I did it, and I graduated. Um, and after graduation, um, I was out deer hunting with my dad and my brothers, and I met my husband. Uh, He's non-native. Um, I tried to fit into a world that I didn't belong in. There was too many cultural differences. His family was, they were racist, they were prejudiced. They never included, my children and I, and, well, my son and I, and, like the family gatherings and stuff like that. So we'd sit home and he'd go. Anyway, him and I, we ended up getting a divorce. I had 3 children then. I started looking for a job, and anyway, he came forward and he filed charges on me and stuff like that, and so they gave him custody of my kids. And so I lost my kids, and I used to go and visit my kids in a parking lot, church parking lot, and anyway, I couldn't get my kids back. Every time I went before the judge, the judge said, I don't want to see you until 2 years from now, or I don't want to see you until a year from now, or whatever, So, anyway, 5 years went by before I was able to get my kids back. And I had a brand new baby at the time, and my baby was now 5. So I missed out on all of that, And I got a job. As soon as I got my kids back, I ran back to the res. And so I stayed here for a while, and I couldn't fit into the community, because it was like everybody, it was like we all grew apart, and, a lot of drinking, a lot of drugging and stuff like that, and I wasn't doing that. And so, we didn't fit in. And I had also gotten married and divorced again. I married an old biker, and we were married only I was married to him for 5 years, but I only lived with him for 3 months, and he went his way, and I went my way. I did groups in the Mahnomen school for 14 years with the kids, just talking about life, living, the culture, what's expected of them, the seven teachings that we have. I just got contracted to do groups for the CD program, so I'll be doing 2 of those 2 groups a week. You know, some of the things that I talk to the kids about is, you know, like how alcohol is not part of our culture. It was introduced to us by the fur traders. You know, the language. The language is really important, you know, because that's part of our history. If we didn't, if we don't learn our language, you know, our history is going to be gone. Because, you know, that's where a lot of it lies in the language. So, you know, I think, you know, they need to know the language. That was my, you know, my late husband, when he and I would go out and do groups, you know, he always said, I want every child on a reservation to learn the language. And so, you know, we were going around doing different things, you know, like we named all the lakes, you know, like Round Lake, White Earth Lake, Twin Lakes, you know. We took those names and we translated the English names into Ojibwe. And hopefully, you know, they're going to put these signs up someday. Probably not in my lifetime, but, you know, I hope they're up there someday. You know, my grandparents, um, they had a son that was in the Navy, and they adopted him. But anyway, he used to write letters to my grandma, and all his letters were in Ojibwe, but they were all phonetic. And she had a stack of them, you know, and I don't know what happened to those. Because I remember as a kid one time, you know, we were reading these letters and we'd laugh because he would tell stories, you know, and we'd laugh and, you know, we'd read it to each other and then we'd all laugh, you know, and stuff like that.
Wow.
You know, and my grandparents too were, when they lived out on Leech Lake,
See my grandma? They're married.
their mode of travel was by water. My grandpa had a horse, but if they wanted to go into town, then they'd have to take the canoe or take the boat and go. And he'd go along the shores of Leech Lake up toward Walker. And then there was a river that flowed off. It was Steamboat River. And he'd take that river. We'd go down that river. And then on 371, there's a railroad track. Then a little village called Wilkinson. Well, that's where my grandma used to go do some shopping when she ran out of groceries. So I remember one time going, and we all had to take turns going with my grandma to translate. I think I was about 10, 11. So, you know, I'm speaking English now. Broken English, but I could talk it. And I think that was another thing too, you know, when I was a kid, you know, my parents couldn't talk, couldn't visit because we all understood it. So we knew everything that was going on, you know, in the house. We'd go out and these old grandmas would all be visiting, you know, and I used to sit there and laugh at, you know, because I knew what they were saying. So, I remember this one woman talking about, she told a joke, and it was a, it wasn't a, it wasn't a nice joke, but anyway, you know, she was telling this joke, and these women were all kind of laughing, you know, and I'm sitting there in the corner, and this one woman saw me, you know, and she said, "Do you know what we're talking about?" I said, "Yeah."
Surprise. That's funny.
So I repeated the joke back to her. My mom was mad at me. I mean, you know, it's getting lost. I remember as a kid growing up, I mean, you know, wherever you went, you know, wherever the people were talking Ojibwe, you know. Now they don't even do that. I used to teach Ojibwe class at the RTC there, you know, and that's how I taught those employees how, you know, I tell them, you know, you need to sing it, you know, and they just kind of laugh, you know. But once he starts singing it, you know, they found that, you know, it's so much easier.
Wow.
They were picking up on it just, you know, like that. And I told them too, I said, you know, if you learn to count from 1 to I don't know if it's 10,000 or 100,000. If you learn those, you'll be speaking Ojibwe. You'll be fluent
No kidding.
because every I want to say syllable, but I don't know if that's the word, is in the counting. So you're pronouncing it, you know.
Interesting.
You know, like when you count, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And Basic, Nish, Niswi, Niwin, Nanan, Ingoraswe, Nijwaswe, Ijwaswe, Jangaswe, Midasan. I have grandchildren, I have great-grandchildren, and my one granddaughter lived with me until she must have been 12. But we taught her, you know, we taught her a lot of stuff, you know. She used to go out in the woods and we'd go hunting and she'd go with us. She was like 5, 6. She'd be out there in the woods with us and she'd be walking around, you know, and she'd look and she'd say, "Oh, there's medicine here." I mean, you know, she knew the medicines, and she had a vocabulary of maybe 300-400 words in Ojibwe. She never kept up on it though, so she lost it, you know. If you don't continue talking in Ojibwe, you lose it. So, you know, it's like you have to practice it every single day. So, you know, like with my great-grandkids now, you know, I teach them the basics, you know, like please, thank you, hello, goodbye, not goodbye. We don't have a goodbye. See you later. But my granddaughter, you know, who had the huge vocabulary, she knew like all the trees. She knew different flowers. She knew like all the animals. She could count. It was after I moved back up here. and I was up here for, I don't know, maybe 2, 3 years. And um, I knew my I knew my last husband. Him and I were friends for like 7 years before that, you know, and he was my best friend. And so anyway, he called me one time, and he was coming up to White Earth, and he wanted to come. He wanted to visit with me. So I said, sure, you know. So, well, then we started dating. Eventually, we got married, you know. And I really stepped into, you know, the cultural aspect. Even though I was raised with my grandma until I was 13, a lot of that stuff, you know, was starting to come back. I remember her teachings, you know, like how to be a woman, how to be an Anishinaabe woman, how to raise your children, um, you know, how to care for your child. There's a certain way that, you know, I guess, you know, like in the old days, you know, when the tribe was being attacked, it was a woman's responsibility to keep the kids quiet. Lord, I got a award for from the state of Minnesota, human rights. Uh, because sometimes I go protesting. I, I did that, you know, when I was younger. And so anyway, I got that award from the governor. And 2 days, I think it was about 2 days later, I got this big envelope in the mail, and I looked at it, you know, and it said, from the office of the governor, Kentucky. I looked at it and I thought, I wonder what kind of money he wants. So I threw it in the back seat, you know, didn't even look at it. Just threw it in the back. And a couple weeks later, I was cleaning out my car and I seen that. And I didn't even look at this, you know, so I opened it up and I read it. And I was made a Kentucky Colonel. That's one of the highest awards you give a citizen. And mine was for human rights. Because, you know, I went down there and I protested digging up burial sites and then presenting it or testifying before the legislators. But it took like 24 years for me to get it. But I got it, you know, and so I'm a colonel. And when I tell people that, I said, you know, I'm right up there with, I'm in the same canoe with Elvis Presley, Bill Clinton, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, a lot of celebrities from California. Most of the ex-presidents. I said, and Mary Favorite.
Alright. For you.
So, anyway, I went down and I went collected my award and got treated like royalty donor, you know. So I'm not quite sure what's in store for me. I've been sick. Um, First he said I had, I was diagnosed with leukemia in July. And a month later, then I was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver. And that was from my medications. So I'm fighting those, you know. There was a time, you know, I don't know, maybe about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, you know, I just said, you know, the heck with it, I don't care, you know, take me, I'm ready, you know. Anyway, I don't, you know, I have no idea how to approach the kids now because, you know, like I said, you know, everything has changed. So I'm going to get a lesson myself. And the only thing I could do is, you know, share my life experiences with them, you know. I think, you know, a lot of our kids, they don't have that cultural knowledge. And, you know, and the parents are screaming about that, you know, yelling about it because their kids aren't learning it, you know, and if they're not learning it, then I think, you know, the parents should go out and learn too,
Definitely.
you know, so they can teach their kids. I mean, you know, that's how I learned. I'm hoping, you know, if I can just get one person to get straight, you know, then I will feel successful. So, meet you.